Today we're going to be talking about drum modules, their settings, and how to set yours up for clean and accurate triggering. These suggestions and settings will help familiarize you with a whole bunch of different drum modules. While some of the settings may have different names, they all work the same way. Almost every drum module will share the same basic settings. They might be called different things, but they achieve the same purpose. Today we're going to use the Alesis D4, which is an older module, just to show you how everything works quite similarly between them and how we can still have modern accurate triggering with an old module. The first setting you might see on your module is gain or sensitivity. This relates to how high of an input you're receiving into the module from the trigger or pad itself. On this unit, we can actually see a visual representation of the volume as we hit the trigger. If we put it all the way down, it barely registers. As we put it up, what we want is somewhere where the hardest hits are quite high up towards the top end. A good starting point is somewhere in the middle, so around that sort of 60 or 6 out of 10, depending on your module. Another setting that you might see in your module is loudness or velocity curve. In this case, it's called V-curve. This usually gives you a sliding scale between 1 to 7. And what that means is how much of the dynamics you want to hear from the trigger in the sample. As an example, let's look at two different extreme velocity curves. When it's on 1, you get the highest dynamics between the style of playing an impact on the trigger. When it's on 7, you basically get the full volume of the sample with no dynamics. Now this next group of settings is about the accuracy of your triggering, making sure we get rid of any double triggering or under triggering. Let's start with noise. Noise is also called threshold on a lot of modules. On this one, however, it's called noise. You can think of the threshold and noise setting as a limit to where the trigger sensitivity has to be when you hit it to be able to set off the sample. In this case, we're obviously just looking at 50, which is out of 100 in this module. Some will go to different numbers, but either way, you want to be adjusting that until you hear your trigger going off on your softest hits. At least the softest hits that you'll be playing at. You can see that there's no sound of the sample coming through because the trigger isn't clear in that threshold. If we back that off, now that trigger can cut through that threshold and set off the sample. The decay, or re-trigger cancel, as it is in a lot of other modules, is a number that represents the time between hits that the module will wait for before registering another kick. When you're doing higher double kick speeds, ranges in the 240 and up, double strokes and that kind of thing, you really want that decay to be down somewhere in that 3 to 4 range, just quite low, so that it is picking up a lot of those hits correctly as you're playing them faster. If you're playing somewhere up to say 220 or in that range anyway, anywhere between 8 and 10 is going to serve you quite well. Let's try some extreme examples on the decay or re-trigger setting to show some real world examples of how this affects double stroke fast kick drum playing. Now let's try something quite extreme. I'm going to play those same double strokes and notice how it doesn't pick up the second stroke on every hit. That's because the number is set so high up that the wait time between hits is longer than the time of the hits that I'm actually playing. So it's never really picking up that second hit off each double stroke. Crosstalk is when multiple triggers are setting off the same inputs. In this case, when you have two triggers in one input on a Roland TM2 or something like that, it's just to make sure that different beaters are not setting off the pad at the same time. This doesn't really apply when you're using pedal mounted triggers because they're independent and they're only being hit by the board of the pedal that you're intending to set off the sample with. Not only have we set up the kick triggers based on the settings that I've shown you, we've also done the same for every single pad on the E-kit. They all work the same way. They're effectively triggering the sample in the module, and each setting is simply individual to that trigger input. So here's a quick real-world example of the settings I use when I'm playing drums through my module. Once you get to know your drum module, it's quite a repeatable and simple process whenever you have different triggers involved. So I hope you enjoy getting acquainted with your drum triggers and your drum module on your journey.